during a private audience with the Rebbe, Mr. Charles Roth, who was the executive director of the National Jewish Post for 29 years. And he told the Rebbe, he said that our publication is independent and completely objective. So the Rebbe responded, the Rebbe said, independent perhaps, but objective? The Rebbe says there's no such a thing as completely objective. It is humanly impossible to be completely objective. Every person has a bias of some kind. And so my question to you is, do you agree with that? Do you agree that everyone has a bias? Or do you think that someone can be completely objective? That's the question. You can answer, you can post in the chat, whatever you want.
No, so I think we all try to be, totally objective and not have a bias, but it's very hard depending on what the topic is and depending on where you are at that particular time also.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
I would say no, but then again, I would say yes, because once you've been made aware of that there could be a bias, and this is when you have to separate your own personal experiences and thoughts and even evil thoughts, just judging another group or a person because of their beliefs or culture. You have to separate yourself completely from that. And once you can connect with the individual and see the problem for what it is, so at this point, while you understand bias, you can still separate from it and be objective. So it is a choice, but it's hard.
Okay, interesting. So now I have a follow-up question. I thank you for sharing that. And the follow-up question is, when you hear the word bias, do you feel it has a negativity or a negative connotation or a neutral connotation, or could it be, I guess, is it a negative connotation or a neutral connotation is the question when you hear the word bias?
So I think at first, where are we? Yeah. So I think at first it has when I first hear it, it has a negative connotation. Yeah. But when you don't hear it in context.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the word bias technically means like an amplification. Like it's actually used in electronics and things like that. So it's basically to lean one way or the other. It's an adjustment, essentially. In the context of what, in modern society, we hear, somebody's biased, they're, some news anchor or some news organization is biased. It usually means they're trying to mislead us in some sort of a way. But if you step back and think about it, it basically, you're programmed to think one way or the other, or to put a certain filter on it. It doesn't need to be negative. It depends on what you're saying. Like you said, the context.
Okay. So when a teacher comes to a parent and says that your child misbehaved, and the parent will most likely stick up for the child, even though a parent will obviously, sometimes discipline the child as a result of whatever the teacher said. But nonetheless, we all would agree, I think, that parents have a certain bias towards their child, right? But I don't think when we hear the term bias in that manner, we wouldn't refer to it as a negative bias. So the content is very important to understand. We use that word, what exactly does it mean? But we're not here to discuss the word bias. We're really more here to discuss today the idea that we have the power through nature, through nurture, or whatever it is, to create a certain bias. In other words, to see things that we experience through a certain lens. We can decide what lens we want to see it through. We could, in a way, change the way we used to see things to a new way in how we're going to see it now. It may not be an easy thing to do, but we have the power to do it. One day, this guy was walking down the street and he meets his old friend, we'll call him Rappaport. And he says, hey, Rappaport, how you doing? So the guy says, I'm not Rappaport. So he says, oh, you look so different. You know, you look a little shorter, you look a little heavier. And he says, well, I'm not Rappaport. This friend says, what? You changed your name also? So of course we know that the point is that we have the power to change how we think. So in other words, the matrix and how we understand things becomes our operating system. Okay? It becomes our default mechanisms through which we contextualize anything. We react or interpret whatever it is that happens. So we talk about content. Things are thrown at us all the time. Well, when we train ourselves to see something in a certain way, we begin to look at everything through that lens. And the question is, what is that lens that we're going to look through everything that we experience? Through what kind of lens? What color lens are we going to look through it? So the Rebbe said, there's no such a thing as being purely objective. You have a bias. So the question then is, what is your bias? And we're going to see soon that we're naturally hardwired to actually have a negative bias. That's our first reaction, is a certain negativity. We'll talk about it soon. But the point is that we have the power to, what the Rebbe calls positivity bias. And in fact, there was once a story where, Nelson, please close the door. There was once a story where this guy came to the Rebbe, to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he says that I have a very serious issue, or gripe. So Rebbe says, what is it? So he said that I went to a shul, a synagogue, and I saw in the synagogue there was a guy that came to every single service, and he would come with his newspaper, and he would read his newspaper during the prayers. And he said, what kind of nerve is it? This guy's coming to his holy place, in the middle of prayers, they're praying to God, and he's sitting there reading a newspaper. He was so upset. So Rebbe told him, Rebbe said, let me tell you something. You don't know this guy. It's very possible that this person had a difficult upbringing. Maybe he survived the war. And maybe he began to question God's existence as a result of that. Maybe he lost his entire family. Maybe he even decided that he doesn't want to pray anymore. Yet, when he heard that there's a synagogue that needs people to come to it to help make the quorum, help make the prayer, the communal prayer, he said, I'm willing to go and help out my friends. I may not believe in God. I may not even say the prayers, but I'm willing to go and help the synagogue establish itself. So this guy goes and he reads the paper. So you tell me, is he doing anything wrong? See, when we change the perspective, when we look at the picture a little bit different, we begin to in a little different outlook, a little different view. At first, yes, it's not respectful. The guy's reading a newspaper in the synagogue. But when we hear things, when we understand that this person really decided now he's not coming to the synagogue ever again, but because he's going through because he understands that there are Jews that want to pray and they need him to come so they can count him for 1 million or whatever it is. So he's willing to go and help them out. So his coming to the synagogue is actually in a way better than the guys that are coming to pray, because he's only coming there to help out his fellow Jew. So the point that Abba was saying is that when you see something happening, you have two ways of looking at it. It's a famous story that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev was when standing in a synagogue and praying, and people came running in. Some of his students came running and says, Rebbe, it's a terrible thing going on right outside the synagogue. Oh, because we could screen share, so I made a little, what do you call it? A little picture here. I think if I didn't lose it. Oh, where did I put it? 1 second. Oh man, what did I do with it? Ah, there it is. Watch this. You see, I made a picture of a wagon. I have a little visual. If it'll show up. Computer's a little slow here. It's coming somewhere. Here it is. There we go. You see that? So these are the olden days, the wagons in the olden days. So they came running into the Beis Hamikdash. They said, there's a man that's out of the synagogue, and he's oiling the wheels, because in order to get the wagon to work properly, you have to oil the wheels. He's oiling the wheels while he's wearing his talis and tefillin. How terrible is that? It's a disgrace for his holy tefillin and talis that he's wearing. So Rabbi Yitzchak Raditcher went outside, and he turns up his hands to the heavens, and he says, God Almighty, look how beautiful your children are. Even while they're oiling the wheels, they're still praying to God. See, the same story, but he saw it completely different. He says, why do we have to see it in a negative way? We can see it in a positive light. The positive light is that no matter what this guy's doing, he's still oiling the wheels. How amazing is that? And this is the point that we have to see ourselves. That when we experience something, we can either ask ourselves, why did this happen? And we can or question it, or we can say, you know something? There's actually a positive twist to it. And in fact, there's a beautiful story, and I want you to hear the story. Well, you're not going to hear it directly from her mouth, but you'll see the story in the historical context. In 1968, I'll give a little introduction. Shirley Chisholm was elected to Congress, the 12th Congressional District. She was the first African-American woman to be elected to Congress. This is a huge deal. And then not everybody was pleased with this. They were very upset in 1968. And so, let's see what happened. I'm going to start over from the beginning. 1 second. So we see clearly, here you have a woman who was very upset at the lack of respect that she was receiving in Congress. And when the Rebbe called her in to meet with her, the Rebbe essentially gave her a mission in life. The Rebbe said, don't look at it that you are just running some committee that has no influence and no significance. In fact, you can make a difference. Until today, poor Americans are benefiting from her vision. And that's what it means to take a situation which at first seems negative, seems unfortunate, yet through changing the way we see it, we can turn it into not only something not bad, we can turn it into something fantastic, something great. And this is what happened. And this is the way that the Rebbe taught us we have to think. So one time, I was only 6 years old at the time, and I grew up with the story that the Rebbe, after he had a heart attack in 1978, or 1977 actually, end of 1977, and the Rebbe really wanted to speak to his Hasidim, to the students. But the doctor said that you really have to take care of your health. And they said, if you don't take care of your health, there's a 25% chance of a relapse. The doctor asked the Rebbe, he says, do you understand what I'm saying? And so the Rebbe said, yes, I understand. You said that even if I don't take care of my health, which I assure you I will, there's a 75% chance that there won't be a relapse. Okay? The same story, a different way to look at it. Right? And so the Rebbe took that statement with a positive outlook and he rephrased it. And this was the paraphrasing of life, that some may see it being as too positive, too rosy. But for the Rebbe, it was a choice. The bias is a neutral word. We can either look at it as a negative or we can look at it as a positive. What are we going to choose? So the natural way to look at it, remember I mentioned, is that bias actually is a negative, which in fact is a term that scientists coined to benefit our consciousness and our safety. Because what happens normally when something occurs to us, if you go throughout the day and you have 9 positive things that happen to you and 1 negative thing that happens to you, you come home and your spouse asks you, how was your day? What's the chance that you're going to talk about the positive things and what's the chance you're going to talk about the negative thing? Chances are, as human beings, we're going to talk about the negative thing first. And there's a reason for it. It's called coping mechanism. That when we experience a negative thing, we automatically utilize it to protect ourselves from anything bad happening again. Which in a way is a good thing. It's a healthy thing. The problem happens is that when we don't spend the time to also focus on the positive things, that when we only focus on the negative and not on the positive, then we become a negative drawn in person and we cannot be happy. We can't be content. We can't celebrate the things in life. In any board meeting that you have with your employees or people that you know, or people you want to, that are charged of doing certain tasks at work, you have to say 10 positive things before you say a negative. If you say you didn't do the job good, they're going to shut up. They're not going to listen to anything you say. So first you have to say the 10 good things, how good they are. And then you can say, oh, but in this area, you didn't do a good job. And the hope is that they'll still do the good job because that one negative is so strong in people's minds that they have a hard time overcoming it. And so out of necessity, we have become masters of fixating on the negative aspects of our lives and our environments. This protects us from putting ourselves in dangerous situations again. We're going to get hurt, so I'm not going to go down this street, or I'm not going to go do this thing or say this thing, whatever it is. But because of that, we become so used to living this mindset of negativity that we forgot about all the positive things, all the positive ways of looking at things. According to recent findings, it says people who have more positive and optimistic lens of life tend to live a full 11 to 50% longer than their pessimistic peers. So being positive not only makes us happier, it also is much healthier. So an individual who used to complain to the Rebbe often about his life circumstances once received the following letter from the Rebbe. I want to see if I can pull it up on the screen over here. No, I closed the screen by mistake. Okay, I don't have it, so I'll read it out to you. So the Rebbe wrote this person a letter. The Rebbe said like this: in our world, everything is a mixture of good and bad. Human beings must choose which aspect they will emphasize, contemplate, and pursue. How instructive is that, which our sages tell us, that Adam was an ingrate. Did you know that Adam was an ingrate? Because even before he was banished from the Garden of Eden, he complained about the circumstances. The moment God created him, what did he say? God, I'm alone. Where's my wife? I don't have a wife. Everyone was created with a match except for me. Right away, he started to complain. He was an ingrate. On the other hand, there were Jewish men and women who thanked and blessed their Creator and recited the morning blessings, even while living in the most horrific times in the German concentration camps. Ultimately, the Rebbe said, everyone's circumstances will be somewhat in between these two extremes. My point is simply to underscore the reality that the type of lives that we live, whether full of satisfaction and meaning or the opposite, depends in large measure on our willpower, which dictates whether we will focus on the positive or on the negative. So the Rebbe was saying a very powerful statement. Our perspectives are so powerful. They can lead us to find fault even in paradise, or to express gratitude even in a state of extreme suffering. In a rare personal disclosure to one of his aides, Rabbeinu Yunik, the Rebbe told him, he said like this: I worked on myself to always look at things in a positive light. Otherwise, I could not have survived. The Rebbe said this about himself. That's a very hard thing to work on, but a very important survival mode. Yes, is it true that we naturally have a negativity bias? Yes, we have it because we need it for survival mode. But is that the way we should function all the time? The Rebbe says absolutely not. We should create a positivity bias, and by living a life of positivity and recognizing that positivity is a matter of choice, not circumstance, and this will drive our perspective and our personality to have a more positive disposition. And so this is the first part of today's class, this idea of being positive and maintaining a positive disposition. Now I want to talk a little bit about the wisdom from our sages, from the ethics of our fathers. I want to talk about an interesting Mishnah. The Mishnah is going to be right here on the screen. Okay. Here we go. Ready? Ben Zoma said, Ben Zoma would say, who is wise? One who learns from every person. As it is stated, from all my teachers I have grown wise. For your testimonials are my meditation. By the way, in general, in life, when we say something, it's very important that we quote a verse. We don't just, when we say something, it's important that we don't just talk about our own feelings, but we bring a source to what we're saying. So even Ben Zoma was a great sage. He brings the source from Psalms, and he says, from all my teachers I've grown wise, from my testimonies are my meditation. he continued to say, who is strong? The person who conquers their own inclination, as it is stated, better one who is slow to anger than one with might. One who rules their spirit than the conqueror of a city. Who is rich? The person who is satisfied with their lot, as it is stated in Psalms, if you eat of toil of your hands, fortunate are you, and good is it to you. Fortunate are you in this world, and good is it to you in the world to come. Who is honored? The person who honors their fellow creatures, as it is stated, to those who honor me, I accord honor. Those who scorn me, I will be demeaned. So I would like to talk about these ideas, these four things. What does it mean to be wise, strong, rich, and honored? What is wisdom? The common perception of wisdom is, not the Jewish perception, the common perception of wisdom is when you see a teacher and a student, you assume that the teacher is the one with the greater knowledge and wisdom. In fact, the wiser and more knowledgeable person is, the less they think they need to learn from others. This is common understanding. The Torah perspective is just the opposite. A truly wise person is the one who finds that they have something to learn from everyone, including those whose knowledge is inferior to others. Okay? This is wisdom, and I'm going to expound upon it in a minute. Power, who is strong. So we usually think of a powerful person, a strong person, as someone who imposes their will on others, while a weak person is someone who lacks the ability to impose their will. The Torah's idea of power is just the opposite. A truly powerful person is someone who restrains themselves, someone with the inner strength to control their own impulses. Wealth, who's rich? So the common conception of wealth, of a wealthy person, is that of someone who, with an oversized ambition, which drives them to obtain lots of money and possessions. The Torah's idea of wealth is just the opposite. Someone who's satisfied with what they have, regardless of how much or how little it is. Honor, what does it mean, honor? So normally we think, it's usually understood, that it's a product of what a person has achieved in wisdom, power, and wealth. You have wisdom, you have power, you have wealth. Okay, you're going to be an honorable person. The Torah says not exactly. The Torah's idea of honor is the very opposite. The truly honored person is a person who respects others, including and especially those who occupy the lower station in life than themselves. I think that today we see this more than ever. We see this idea in the COVID-19 world, who all of a sudden became the most important employee of any company. Do you know what position became the most important position? Anybody want to try to share?
People who pack our foods, grocery store workers, etc.
Okay. Anybody else?
Delivery guy.
Okay, very good. Also, anyone else?
Nurses,
Okay.
medical staff,
Within a
not
company,
necessarily surgeons.
within a company, with any, even a hospital, who's even within the supermarket, who is the most important person?
Cleaning staff.
Cleaning staff, exactly. The janitorial staff, until now, people did not even look at. People didn't even realize when they were walking by or doing their job. Right? We probably don't even know the names of the people that clean our facilities, our offices. Yet today, in the world we live in, we see how important it is. You know the story with JFK? JFK was touring NASA, and it's one of my most beautiful stories. I love this story. JFK was touring NASA, and he saw the janitor. And he stopped him. He says, "What's your name?" He said, "My name is John." He says, "What do you do here?" He says, I help send people to the moon. How beautiful is that? One would think, he's merely mopping the floor. Really? You're cleaning out the waste baskets. No, this guy saw his mission as helping send people to the moon. Yes, that's what he's doing. That he is absolutely correct. So honor is not what we always thought to be honor, the top person in the company. Not necessarily. The Torah's view of honor is the person who respects others. That's an honorable person. So now let's look at all these things slowly. Okay? Who is a wise person? The Mishnah says, one who learns from every person. In Judaism, the term used for Torah scholar is a Talmid Chacham, which literally means a wise student or a student of wisdom. Okay, indeed, Rabbi Shmuel de Usida, who was a scholar in the 16th century, he said, one can never separate the word student from the word wise. The moment a person stops thinking of themselves as a student, they're no longer called wise. How profound is that? So learning from every person obviously implies that we must also learn from those who we may think are intellectually and morally inferior to us. They're probably not, but that's sometimes we think they are. But what should we learn from someone who is objectively speaking a bad person? One can ask if we're supposed to learn from every person, but we know people, not everybody is good. So what should we learn from someone who's not really good? Right? So we're going to give a couple answers. The first answer is that we can learn what not to do. Sometimes we learn how to behave. Sometimes we learn how not to behave. So we see a bad person or person that is misbehaving. What can we learn from them? How not to do what they're doing. But then we have the question, why did we, or we can go even deeper than that, Not only do we have to learn from the person what not to do, also the fact that we saw this person and we met this person, this bad person, let's call this whoever it is, a bad person. The reason we met them is because they're actually mirroring ourselves to some degree. We saw them and we saw their negative trait because we probably have a negative trait also. And we saw it to teach us a lesson how not to be. Okay? That's one reason. Another perspective we can say, what can we learn from someone that may not be that great of a person? Is we have to look at the person and say, wait a second, what can I learn from you? There has to be something that you're doing that maybe there's a lesson there for me. For example, there's a famous teaching that the great Reb Zusha from Anipal, one of the great Hasidic people of the previous generation, he said that there are 7 things we can learn from a thief. Yeah? Even a thief, he said we can learn 7 things. He said like this, number 1, I learned that what he does, he keeps to himself. Right? He doesn't brag about it. That's a smart man, a smart thief. Number 2, what do we learn from a thief, he said, is he's willing to take risks to attain his goal. How true is that? He tries once, may try again. It's a second. He's willing to take risks. Number 3, he's meticulously careful with all the particulars of his operation, regardless of whether it's a major component or a small detail. Okay? That's the 3rd point. The 4th thing that he says, he invests great effort in what he does. Another lesson we learn is that a thief is swift. He works fast. Another one is he is always optimistic. Number 7, he said, is a 7 that we learned from a thief, is if he fails the first time, he keeps coming back for another. Okay? And this is a lesson we learn. You ask, or we ask, what could I learn from anybody? He says, look, even from a thief you can learn. Here we have a picture of a thief right there. See that? Okay. Finally, he says there's another lesson we learn. We should recognize that every one of God's creations is inherently good. The negativity we see is only the external reality. If you look deep enough, we will find the positive core of goodness. It may be difficult to see at first. That is why it requires true wisdom to learn from every person. Who is wise? He who learns from every person. Why can anybody be a wise person? The reason is very simple, because not everyone has the power to look deep beneath the person and to see only the positivity. The only way we can see the positivity is if you're a wise person. You have to dig deeper. And here we have an interesting story that we learn. The Talmud tells us that the great Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rav Shimon, was once riding home to his house. He was on the back of a camel or a horse, whatever it was. And he saw a particularly ugly person. And he tells this guy, and he says, hello. The man says, hello back. So Rav Shimon looks at him and he says, I can't imagine how anyone can say this to anybody. But this is what the Talmud tells us. This is what he said. He said, empty one, how ugly are you? Are all the people in your city this ugly? And so, Rabbi Shimon, so the man turns to Rabbi Shimon and he says, what do you want from me? Talk to the person that created me. Talk to the person that made me. Powerful statement. I didn't form myself. God created me. Talk to God. As soon as Rabbi Shimon heard this, he got off his horse and he bowed down to the man. He said, please forgive me. I'm so sorry. And so the man said, I'm not going to forgive you. So I'm not going to forgive you until you talk to the creator that made me this ugly. So Rabbi Shimon said, what can I do to ask for forgiveness? He said, I told you, speak to the creator. So finally, Rabbi Shimon started walking along with this guy, begging him for forgiveness. They walked all the way to the city that Rabbi Shimon lived in. Rabbi Elazar lived in. When Rabbi Elazar came to his city, he was greeted by all his students. He was a great rabbi. And they said, who's this man that's with you? And so the man said that he's your teacher. He insulted me. He said such and such a thing to me. So the people said, why did he say that? And they said, he did say it, then please forgive him. So he said, I'll forgive him, but on one condition, that he does not act the same to anybody else. Don't ever talk to anybody else like this. Immediately after this, Rabbi Elazar entered the study hall and he said, a person should always be pliant as a reed and not hard as a cedar. Be flexible, don't be firm. This is the end of the story. But let's analyze this story. He was a rabbi. How could he have spoken like this to this individual? Really, how could he have said that you were so ugly? And so here's really what was going on. A little spiritual perspective on this whole story. Rabbi Elazar was saying, someone has a question? Rabbi Elazar was saying that you look so empty and so ugly. What does that mean? you seem to be void of any holiness, any Torah study, any mitzvot. And so what did this man say? He said, don't come to me. Talk to the Creator who made me. What happened at that very moment? The man realized that what Rabbi Eliezer was saying was right. Why am I so empty? Why have I not studied Torah? Why have I not fulfilled God's will? For the first time in his life, he realized that there's a Creator on the world. And so what happened here? Rabbi Eliezer essentially caused this man to think about God. So this perhaps answers our question. What can we learn from a bad person? A wise person will know to dig deeper within this person. Rabbi Eliezer made the mistake by calling him an ugly person without digging deeper and seeing the goodness within this person. The fact that this person called out to God, said, let the Creator of the world make me less ugly. Essentially, the man was asking God to give him guidance, to give him the strength that he needs in order to be a good person. That moment was a pivotal moment in this man's life, where Rabbi Eliezer should have seen it also and helped him recognize it in a positive way, not speaking in a negative way. But the moment he did realize what Rabbi Eliezer was saying was right, he did indeed turn around. And so this is the task of every person, to look at another person and learn from the other person. This is the lesson that we learn from who is wise that the Mishnah said. Let's go to the next question. The next one is Ben Zoma said, who is a strong person? And they said like this, the person who conquers their own inclinations. We usually see external challenges as the things that test our strength. But our greatest challenge really comes from within. The most powerful things we have are our own desires and instincts. These are what motivate us to achieve everything we accomplish in life. Sometimes they're our own greatest enemy when they impel us to bad and self-destructive behaviors. Our greatest challenge in life are when we need to conquer our own natural inclinations. So what does it mean when we're strong? When we simply recognize our qualities and we're able to overcome it. Okay? The verse that is quoted in the Mishnah, I want to bring up the verse again so we can see it. Here's the verse. Who is strong? He says, better one who is slow to anger than one with might. One who rules their spirit than the conqueror of a city. The verse that quotes says like this. The comparison is significant. A true conqueror doesn't demolish the enemy city. When you come to conquer a city, a true conqueror wouldn't destroy it. The Nazis destroyed the cities. They burned down towns. What did they gain by it? Nothing. There was only ashes and rubble after they came back. Today, in many of the Arab countries, Syria fights a war. What do? They destroy the cities. That's the dumbest thing to do. A wise conqueror, a truly strong conqueror, what do? They leave the city intact. So they can now have more property or another city to rule over, to have people inhabit that city. And so who is truly a strong person? It uses an analogy, one who rules their spirit than the conqueror of a city. They're not the conqueror of the city. They're a developer of the city. So a true strong person is able to control their own and rule over the inclination, that it shouldn't rule them, but they rule over it. The next one is, who is rich? The person who is satisfied with their lot. More money and more possessions typically does not bring more satisfaction. In the words of our sages, the person who has $100 wants $200. The one who has 200 desires to have 400. It never ends. First, it is on the other hand, the person who is satisfied with what they have is doubly rewarded. How are they doubly rewarded? First, he's fortunate for you in this world, and that such a person is free of the stress of anxieties that come with a never-ending pursuit of material riches. Secondly, such a person can devote their life to worthy pursuits, to not think about making more money, right? You know the term a rat race? The term rat race is actually not a 20th century term, but actually the Talmud talks about it. The Talmud says, why are inhabitants of the world compared to rodents? Just as rodents scurries about and hoards things, not knowing what the purpose is while they're hoarding it, so do all inhabitants of the world scurry and hoard without knowing what they are hoarding. But a rich person is content with what they had. But there's one more detail in the importance of a rich person, and that is that a truly rich person knows what to be content with and what not to be content with. We're content with our physical, material possessions that we have, but one is never content with their spiritual possessions. We always want to learn more. We always want to do more. This is what the Mishnah is telling us, that he who is happy, who is rich, someone who's content, satisfied with their lot. It's an easy thing to read, but a very hard thing to internalize. And finally, we come to the fourth thing. Who is honored? The person who honors their fellow creatures. The verse of the Mishnah cites to support the statement, for those who honor me, I accord honor. Those who scorn me will be demeaned. It's talking about those who honor God, not other people. The word that he uses over here in the Hebrew is hamachabed es habriyos, who honor his fellow creatures, even a creature. In other words, they have no other meritorious thing, no other good things. The only thing that they have is what? Is that they're a created being from God. Even such a person we have to honor and we have to respect. And this is the lesson that we learn from today from this Mishnah. I want to end with one little thought, and that is that we know that the eye is a very powerful tool. Because a person's eye, one second. A person constantly wants more things. Did I have that? I wrote it down some of my notes. I can't find it now. Anyway, so the person's eye has no limit to how much they see and how much they want to accumulate. However, one of the sages was very wise, and he said, I can take the eye and I can make you be able to see things differently. One second, let me find it here. Here's the eye. There we go. Found the eye. Okay. You see the eye, it's a very complex. It can see things, but the more the eye see, the more the eye wants. So what does the Mishnah tell us? All you have to do is take a little piece of dirt, cover the eye a little bit, and then we're content. We have whatever we have. We're content with what we have. So the Mishnah is telling us, essentially, is that I did a funeral today for someone, and basically, the man, at 50 years old, he decided that he wants to become an attorney, and he got a law degree. He never used it in practice. He just really had this urge. But his kids tell me that he was a very happy person. He was very content with what he had. And that's a major, he lived in an apartment, whatever. He didn't have a life of luxury. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't live a life of luxury, but the point is that how important it is to be content. This adds so much happiness to us when we're see the things we have, and we thank Hashem for giving us those things, and we're content with that. With that, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Have a very good week. Sorry about the switch of the day. Next week we'll be back to Monday night. I look forward to seeing everyone. You can put your cameras on so we can see everyone's faces and whatever, get to know each other for a minute. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
If anyone has any questions, please
Thank you.
don't hesitate.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it was beautiful. Somebody had given me a copy of the book, Positivity Bias.
I love that.
And I thought it's the most amazing title, because we do, like you were saying, we have a choice. We can look at things in a positive way, or we can look at things in a not positive way.
No, I encourage, there's many books written about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Actually, that book, in my humble opinion, is the best book written about the Rebbe.
Really? Uh-huh.
I think so. It gives a very good, clear understanding of
Uh-huh.
the Rebbe's perspective on life, but also about the Rebbe's life. So if you want to know about the Rebbe, you don't need to read, some of these books that are written. Tolushkin, these are good books.
Right.
But this captures, I think, the Rebbe a lot more. I like
Uh-huh.
it. I love the book.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, I was very, very happy to receive it, actually. So, yeah, it's been good. So thank you for the class.
Thank you. Okay.
It's great. Okay.
All right.
See you
Have a
next week. Rabbi, how many weeks is the class? It's over before Shavuos?
Yeah. 2 more
Oh,
weeks.
okay, fine. Good. Wonderful. Okay, thanks so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
After Shavuos, we're going to start another class. But
All right.
topic-
This will be done. Okay.
Have a good night. Take care. Bye.
Take
Have a
care.
good night.
Good night.